Choosing 10 top stories of the year is a subjective task, certainly. We've asked our producers and today's Line Opinion panel for their choices, which sometimes coincided and sometimes diverged. But we came up with a final list. We'd also like to know what news, events, and stories were the most important to you and your family. Get in touch with us on our website, NewMexicoInFocus.org. You can connect with us anytime on Facebook or Twitter. Now, let's get started with story number 10. We have a great group of journalists with us this week, starting with Marisa DeMarco, general assignment reporter at KUNM Radio. Associated Press reporter Russell Contreras is here. Steve Terrell, political reporter for the Santa Fe New Mexican, and Julianne Grimm, editor of the Santa Fe Reporter. Now, the rollout of the two-tiered license program didn't go as smoothly as many had hoped. On November 14th, New Mexico's Motor Vehicle Division began issuing two different kinds of vehicle operator IDs. One is a driver's license that complies with the Federal Real ID Act, and the other is a driving authorization card geared towards immigrants. Russell Contreras, many drivers seeking licenses or those cards weren't prepared. Do you think folks were prepared on both sides of the counter, meaning the MVD folks as well as the public? Could we have done better?
Yes, we could have done that, and the federal government could have done better in explaining this, because this was a national debate that was localized, and both sides dug in their heels and to this debate and tried to frame this argument about immigration from a local issue. Right. It's been going on since Martinez walked in. Both sides, as I reported, were getting annoying, just to put it quite frankly. Right. They were one side would say, we're against fingerprints all the way. And then once fingerprints were accepted, they're like, well, we're for it. That's right. And Martinez lost. So it was this weird dynamic, more so that even though it was so provincial, then after the election of Donald Trump, some of the same immigrant groups were saying we need to have a town hall meeting about driver's license. No, that's way down the list now. Right. I mean, immigrants are really scared about what a Trump administration does, and I think what it showed is how provincial we are, and I think it's still not resolved. And the federal government got a green pass on the fact that they were the ones trying to enforce this on us.
Right, right. Steve Terrell, follow up on that if you would. You know, you followed the politics of this closely. It had this big crescendo, then suddenly this weird drop off. Are we better off now as New Mexicans with this program, or is this something we need some more time to manage fully?
Well, I think they need more time to work the bugs out in the system. Yeah. I get complaints, other reporters, and I'm sure other news outlets get complaints almost every day about somebody who went to the MVD and had problems. He didn't have the right documentation. Right. They didn't know, and it's on the website what you can have. You know, have column A, column B, column C. But you know, there's some people out there in this state who do not have computers and access to computers. That's right. And I talked to a lady the other day like that who, and she doesn't even have to have her license renewed for another 2 years, like me. So hopefully by the time she and I are ready to get our driver's licenses, some of the bugs will be worked out and it'll just become routine again.
Marisa, the driver authorization card, there's an interesting angle to this. A lot of folks are having issues, however, saying this is sort of a backdoor to literally documenting immigrant folks that are here. What's your sense of your reporting on this issue?
Yeah, I mean, we read a great piece this week about the concern that having this two-tiered license systems in effect identifies and gives a lot of personal information of people who are undocumented immigrants. And with the, radical immigration policies of the president-elect, is it going to create a situation where the federal government could demand that information in an effort to deport folks? And so there's concern with that. There's concern with people who are under DACA because they provided a lot of personal info to receive that protection. So there's already ACLU's already talking about, is there a way to push back on governmental demands for that information should it come down?
Exactly right. Julianne Grimm, glad you're here with us as well. The idea of safety, that was a big deal for the governors, of those who supported the governor's side of it, that there was a public safety issue here. That's sort of washed out in the dialogue recently. What's your sense of that?
My sense is that was never a real issue. I think that Marisa's right. It's really the system that we've created is about identifying people. Right. And that there is a very real danger of that. We've got the one of the top immigration attorneys in Santa Fe has been telling people who are qualified for the Deferred Action Program not to apply now because of this concern that there could be list sharing. Right. And in the state of New Mexico, there's also a concern about who would get that subpoena. if the federal government did want our list, would it go to the governor's office? Would it go to the cabinet that's, in charge of motor vehicles? Would it go to the attorney general? Who's a Democrat, who maybe has a different idea. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and that our two-tiered system did not make things clear.
Interesting. I'll leave that there. Now let's move on to number 9 on our list of the top stories of 2016. The land is important to New Mexicans, certainly, and the environment is always an important topic for us. We've covered many stories over the year, lawsuits filed over the Gold King mine spill, a settlement reached on the incident at the nuclear waste site, PNM's rate hike request to cover air pollution reduction costs would be a few. And Julianne, the environmental news item, which topped the list for you? There was so much on the environment. This is a big one, but it still came in at number 9. What was the one for you this year?
I do think that the EPA, role in the big spill that happened that, turned the Animas River the color of Tropicana.
Right.
I think that was a big story, and that's a story that continues. It won't be resolved, even if the EPA agreed to pay the estimated remediation cost, no amount of money is going to undo the damage, and they say that if there's an increased runoff and increased flow in that river, that we're going to see a whole nother wave of sediment that's been locked onto the riparian area. So I think that people, especially in the Navajo Nation, are going to be feeling the ripples of that spill for decades.
That's right.
More than
Russell
decades.
Contreras, also tribes feeling the ripples that Julianne's mentioning as well. They were highly affected by this, and the Navajos particularly. If you think back on it, with those awful water tank trucks they were getting with, terrible water, there were all kinds of issues for the tribes.
Yes, and the Navajo president still hasn't got a call from the Obama administration.
No kidding.
President Obama.
Wow.
This is a case where, with the new president-elect coming in with radically different views about what the EPA does and its environmental policy, is coming in a place where the EPA is already facing a number of criticism under a progressive administration. So now even though environmentalists are upset, when you talk to people in Indian country, they're saying, well, what's the difference? Because we had a very activist EPA, and we're not getting results. So let's see what happens as a result. So now the EPA is in this spot where all sides are criticizing it, and all they have to do is look at the river and see what the results are.
Right, exactly right. The amount of money, Steve Terrell, that the feds are going to give local, a lot of folks have a problem with the sheer amount. Just like Julianne mentioned, there's no amount big enough, certainly. But it had to be better than $4.5 million,
Yeah, that was a fraction of the estimated damage. It's and I don't know what they're going to do. The federal government's basically broke too, and I don't know. I like this story though because the fact the EPA was responsible for this spill made environmentalists out of a number of Republicans. And it was terrible what happened.
Right, exactly. Marisa, glad to talk to you about this. You went out and did some reporting out in the area, I understand. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I went to Shiprock shortly after the spill, and Shiprock is really the agrarian hub of the Navajo Nation, and talked to a bunch of people out there. And I think the thing that really struck me about it is that, so the Navajo Nation is now suing the U.S. government for a big chunk of funding to look at getting some restitution for the long-term environmental damage. But the thing that they pointed out that I think gets forgotten is that, EPA created the problem, and EPA is part of the federal government too. So when the entity that created the problem is also in charge of determining what kind of costs are recouped, that creates an interesting conflict that I don't think is highlighted in often.
Exactly right. Russell Contreras, going to start with you for another one. WIP was big for us this year. We had, of course, part of a continuing story from last year, of course, was dealing with the roof collapse and all that other stuff. Where do we sit now with WIP and the bigger environmental picture when it comes to its location?
We don't know. The delayed opening, we were told when this happened, we might expect it to be open by now, and it's not. There's still more questions than there are answers on that. And for an area like Carlsbad, where it depends on this, it's an economic hub, it's going to be a real question with the new administration coming in. I don't know if that's going to be clarified anytime soon.
What do you think about that? New administration, is there going to be a push to get this thing resolved?
I think the upside for those rural communities around the WIP is that this huge settlement, the $74 million New Mexico's getting, means they all get groovy road improvements.
Right.
They're stuck in an area where, I think the sentiment in that area is we need these jobs. We want WIP to be open. I think there's a slightly different sentiment, up in Santa Fe where we're watching the waste leave Los Alamos and knowing that there really is no way. There's really no
for them and all of the other locations as well. Steve Terrell, the idea that, as Roger says, no one really knows when this thing's going to reopen. So how do you plan for the future if you are Carlsbad? If you are, do you know what I mean? Nobody really knows at the end of the day.
And that's a question I don't have an answer for.
Yeah.
How do you plan? It's it's going to be up in the air for a while. I don't know if Donald Trump is going to clarify it anyway at all.
What do you make of the relationship between Lanol and WIP at this point? Julianne just mentioned, obviously, they've got transuranic waste and all that other stuff sort of sitting there waiting. You know what I mean? It's a difficulty for them as well. It's like a domino.
That's why they built WIP in the first place.
Right.
Yeah. So it is it's just like so much else in the government realm. It's stagnant.
Exactly right. Maurice, I'm going to throw one last one out there on you, different from WIP, but P&M was out there, had a heck of a year, as they say, closing down plants over here, opening over here, getting rate reductions rejected. Where do we sit now with P&M? They're in a bit of a tough spot. They're trying to move to renewables, but at the same time, they're trying to make their investments in older technologies work. It's a difficult position for them right now.
Yeah, so they're faced with trying to address some of the issues that are created by their existing plants, and they're asking for another rate hike now in a time when New Mexicans don't have a lot of cash. So there is an interesting tension and conflict there between what people are able to pay and what needs to happen to change the situation at some of these plants.
Right, exactly right. Steve, I'm going to bounce back to you on that one. Talk about that a little bit, if you would. You covered P&M's year as well.
Right. Yeah. They did not get the rate increase they wanted, and they're asking for another one, like Maurice has said. And they've got another problem too politically, in that the PRC, Public Regulation Commission, one of the most pro P&M people on there, Karen Montoya, was defeated in the primary. Cynthia Hall, who defeated her, don't think she's hostile to P&M, but she's going to be a lot tougher on them, I think. So I think they're going to have a rougher time with this new rate increase.
Yeah, interesting. Russell, pick up on that as well. Where does P&M sit right now after the 2016 they had?
Well, especially with the oil prices they are now, they're still, their costs and their profits are going down, so they're going to have to look for revenue right now.
Exactly. Julianne, same question. What do you think?
I mean, I think one of the issues is that P&M has several sort of chunks of money that they're trying to recover through this rate increase. And I thought it was interesting that one of them is from revenue lost by people using less electricity. So here we figured out how to conserve energy, and then we're going to be punished for it.
That's
And I just think that's a regulatory flaw that we ought to be able to address.
2017 is going to be very interesting for this organization. Now, we'll have to end it there. We'll be back in just a bit to talk about two more top stories of the year.